glad to see you all on the first official Saints High School Debate Club round. I'd like to start the debate by calling the Prime Minister. You will have 5 minutes to define those debates and start it.
Okay. So basically, the motion is to allow police officers to refuse orders on the grounds of conscience, and what this means is that basically police and other authorities should be able to refuse orders based on their own morals. And this problem can be seen all over the world. I think that a completely obedient police force to the government, for example, which is usually the thing that is in charge of the police force, a completely obedient police force to the government without the ability to refuse orders will be used as a political tool, because they can't judge what's moral on their own. And when they are forced to follow every single order, then they will do whatever is necessary to keep the government in power, which isn't necessarily the task of the police force in a working democracy. But in certain countries, for example Russia, the police force is getting used in a way to gain political power and essentially crush opposition. And this is because the police have no right to refuse an order. When they get an order to shoot at the Protestants, they will have to do it. And in order to assure morality within the government, the police must have the ability to refuse those orders. And without that, a police becomes essentially a tool for the government. And the police's role is much more than just keeping peace and enforcing law. It's more about it's more about you to maintaining the society's integrity in general. And horrible massacres in history happened because police and other authorities followed orders without thinking. For example, what happened in the Soviet Union, where the KGB was essentially ordered to round up every single foreigner and political opposition and throw them into a camp called the Gulag. And when authorities have the authority to refuse orders on moral grounds, then situations can happen like those in World War II Germany, where certain generals were ordered by Adolf Hitler to, shoot the Allied prisoners. But certain generals, for example, like Erwin Rommel, refused to do so, which would later on, of course, Rommel would be punished for it. But in general, horrible massacres were avoided via this way. And yeah, that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you for your speech. And to continue this debate, I would like to call the leader of opposition. Your speech will start with your first constructive words.
Okay, so we will show the counter-arguments to the motion that state that this House allow police officers to refuse orders on grounds of conscience. So first of all, policemen have to serve the community. They cannot refuse orders from their bosses or their chiefs because they need to treat everyone the same. If we give them allowance to actually decide on whether something is right for them or not, they might actually prioritize some other society groups. What I mean by that is that policemen have their own political opinions and their moral opinions, and if we give them right to refuse some orders that are given to them by some bosses of theirs, they might actually decide on their own, which is not good because that would mean that police will be separated into many groups of policemen that are deciding differently. So policemen should serve to the community, and they should really treat everyone the same. So because they don't work for themselves, they work for the community, so they cannot decide and they cannot refuse orders, especially from the chiefs that probably know something better. So the second argument is that they don't have a right to decide what is right and what isn't. The role of court and judges is to decide whether police should do something. Police isn't a group of people that should decide whether something is right. Judges and courts have the right to do that. They do verdicts that policemen have to obey. If they don't do that, they will actually they won't obey the law, and that's very bad because that would create a gap between the authorities that actually do verdicts and police. And if we don't do that, there might be a situation where judges do some verdicts, but policemen have their own moral and ethical problems, even though they have a verdict that is on them to do, and they don't do it, and that's actually criminal. And they don't obey the law, so that would be a problem. Yeah, police cannot assume what is right and what is not. So, yeah, I think that will be it for me.
Thank you for your speech. And to continue these debates and rebuild your case, I would like to call the member of government.
Hello. Yeah. So some orders could be wrong and misinformed. Also, sometimes orders have to be ignored because of the unethical actions of governments. They can refuse orders and still do their roles as peacekeepers. That's really all I can think of.
Thank you for your speech. And to continue debates, I would like to call the member of opposition.
Okay, so the first thing that I would say that is that the policemen, they can get easily tricked by the mastermind who is trying to do the crime. And so the example here I can give is that a drug seller who has to sell his drugs to a person, and the person is sitting at the place where police is always there. So the way he can deliver the drug is just by using a kid, so that the police don't have any suspicion that about him. So whenever, if even if the police sees the kid that he's doing a bad thing, the police cannot treat him as an adult, because if there wasn't a kid adult, the police would catch him and try to investigate him. So he couldn't do that because the community is there and the community can react quickly, because the kid there can get hurt badly if police start investigating and if the kid tries to run. So so treating so they have to uh, treat the kid really politely to make a better decision to make, and then they must start the investigation with the kid to find the real person who has done the crime. And as my partner said, that the policemen cannot decide by themselves because they work for the community, not for themselves. So they have to follow the orders that they are given. So yeah, so whenever they catch a victim who has done the crime, they are not the ones who must decide what to do with them. For example, they are not the ones who can give them punishment, and for that you have court who is there, who can decide what to do with the victim, how big is the crime, and what punishment should be given. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the next speech, I would like to ask the web speaker from the government to sum up all the debates we had.
Okay, so I guess I will sum up our main points. Basically, what this motion states is that it's really a bit debate about whether police officers still can fulfill their role as peacekeepers within a society, and while at the same time being able to refuse orders when they think they're immoral. And as our site stated, it is important so that they have this ability, because, well, otherwise they will be essentially tools for the government. And also people can make mistakes on both ends, really. So there should be, at both ends, there should be mechanisms and the ability to refuse to do what the other side says. In this case, police and their their boss, or like the people who are in charge of the police, both sides can make mistakes, but in certain cases, usually one side is supposed to follow what the other says, and essentially, and the mistakes done by the people in charge have much more impact than the people who follows these orders. That's pretty much sums it up. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to ask the last speaker of this debate, and it's opposition whip speaker.
So to sum up our arguments, policemen have to serve the community. They cannot treat people differently. They cannot obey the orders they cannot refuse the orders that authorities give them, because that would create a gap. And the gap would mean that they could decide on their own. And as we said, it's not their job to decide what's right and what isn't. It's clearly a court's job, and judges have to do that. This is actually a very big problem nowadays, as we see in Poland, because policemen, they are very neutral when it comes to the recent news in Poland that's happening, especially in Warsaw, regarding abortion of women. But they are treating the same both sides of the conflict. So yeah, and also as my teammate said, policemen could be tricked by some kind of criminals to actually use their law to refuse the orders. And what I mean by that is that criminals could use children or very, very poor looking people to actually trick policemen that these people are working for their food or for the only money they get. And actually, what they could do is just actually play the policemen so they wouldn't treat or they wouldn't do the order that the authorities give them. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you all for this debate. I'll just make education for 15 minutes or even 10, and I'll get back to you in that time. I'm really was very proud to hear this debate, because when it comes to crimes and everything like that, people start to talk only about corruption, and at the end, like, we have no other explanations or extensions on this topic, and it's mostly irrelevant, but in this debate we had really good ideas. To begin with, like in these games, I'm proud to say that the opposition side wins, but all the problems we have there, you can fix it, and it's not really a big deal. Like, it's only a case of experience. And to begin with, I want to explain what's going on. And the one thing I would like to admit, first of all, is that Oskar, you did really well with explanations and definitions. The one thing you could be better, like to give more information. For example, when we have some topics in debate, maybe there is some reason why we talk about it, why we have discourse on it, why we have both pros and cons. And your main task as Prime Minister, the one person who starts the debate, is to give a definitions why, like, in which cases your case is the best, like all the environment cases, and about which police officers are you talking, in which environment, what's their intentions, and etc., etc. For this reason, you can just describe everything you know about this topic. Like, when we have a police officer, you can define what this person has intentions, maybe more about her or his personality, because actually the one thing we do in debates, it's all about people. Like, you can't say the government feels better or worse. We call it people, and not only they feel better and worse as well, but they feel something in their heads, and it's only about feelings of them. And when we talk about examples, it's also really good, but it's not that clear, like, why is it bad? Because when you tell that it's Russia, okay, as a person, I understand you, like, okay, Russia isn't that good, like, their politics are bad and people suffer. But in debates, you can just imagine I'm a small child and I have no I have no idea what's going on in Russia. And your task is to explain me, like, when the government of Russia makes a really bad law where all the homosexuals are breaking the rule only for the reason they're homosexual, it's bad for people because they suffer and they must go out of the country. And after that, I understand maybe they leave their homes and it's not that good for them. And when I keep explaining and like getting me explained what's going on in this country and why it's bad for that people, I get to understand the role of the police officer who refused to do something. And also, you can, on the government side, you can explain like how the policeman can impact. What's my role as a policeman in these debates? And also for the both sides, it's very important point to talk about different people in this case. Because when we talk as this house, it's not really known who is that house. It's like a third party who just analyze the situation. And when you have this abstract variant of it, you can just analyze the whole actors, like all the people who take part in it. And in this case, there are three main actors, like government, police officers itself, and people of this country, like all the people who are residents of it. And in this case, you can describe, like on both sides, what's going on for government, where it's better to live in it, where the government has its power, is it good or not for it, and etc. Also for police officers, the thing that the government side tried to explain, like what the government have to do. And also I heard on the very beginning of opposition case, when I hear that in case we have some laws, maybe we have some reason why we have it. And I hear from Kacper that we have priorities as a community, and it's good for us to have those rules because their origin is known for us. For example, we want to have something and we make it as a law. Like we didn't want to be killed, and for this reason we prohibit it in our country. And also, talking about actors, the last actor is people. It wasn't mentioned in debates, but you could also analyze like what's the people reaction. For example, when I'm just coming through the street and I'm homosexual in Russia, so maybe in case I'm going with my boyfriend and I'm a boy, police officers will have to take us away to the police. But maybe for me as a gay person isn't a problem that I'm just going through the street with my boyfriend and I'm not really feeling like I'm breaking the law. And in this reason, maybe you as a police officer also don't want to follow this rule only because it's existing. And in this reason of the laws that really may harm somebody, you can tell that both police officers as just people and people who may broke the rule which is irrelevant or just not so related to reality, can be also used in this debate. And as well, I wanted to tell, like, when you have some debates, your case have to be like a box, like it has to be clearly understandable. And if you have some outcomes, it should be connected with arguments you have. And when it comes to web speeches, you don't have to repeat everything you and your partner said, because the more essential work for web speaker is to summarize and explain all the ideas in comparison. Because when you're just only repeating, okay, I as an educator have heard everything you said. It's not a big deal because I read almost everything you say, so you don't have to remind me what was in these debates. But what's essential, you can compare your ideas and the ideas of your opponent. In this case, it could be like where people live better, or where I, as a police officer, is more connected to my principles, to my intentions, where I feel better, where I feel like I'm doing the right things. And in this sense, you can understand like where you do some work better on opposition or on government. And what is more, you can compare not only similar ideas, but also different. You can compare, hello, Ahmed, like what do you have in these debates, and what is more important, to follow your own principles or to follow something like governmental principles. Like making this comparison makes debates more interesting. And for this reason, we play debates not only in a vacuum, when only one person can say something and that's all, you're doing a great job, you're talking very good and pronouncing everything good, but also about communication, because when you have different teams, you should tell me as adjudicator why your case is better, why your case and your arguments works better in comparison to the other teams. And doing these things, you can win and doing really better debates with really better outcomes.